This little cage that I built a couple years ago has seen so much use in my game that I figured it was time to make one with you. Hey guys, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. I built this little cage for an encounter a couple years ago, and since then it has made its way into almost every one of my sessions. If not every session, then definitely every adventure. It's such a versatile little piece. I mean, every dungeon or town or whatever has a use for a little cage, whether it be holding an NPC prisoner or just holding some goods that are being shipped at the port. I mean, like, it's a box and you can drop it almost anywhere. It's a fairly straightforward build, but working with the material comes with some difficulties. So I'm going to show you how I made one of these by making one with you guys today. This build is really quite simple. It's essentially just making a little box, and the material I'm going to be using for it is this plastic canvas or plastic needlepoint mesh. Sometimes it's called granny grating. There's a bunch of different names, but it's basically this little plastic screen that people use to do needlepoint, I guess. It's sold at all sorts of craft stores, hobby stores. I bought this at Michael's. You can get it at Walmart. I think it's often white, but I have been able to find black, which is ideal because this stuff is a little bit difficult to work with in terms of adhesion and painting. So having the black plastic is really nice because if it ever scrapes off, if your primer fails, then it'll just show black underneath, which is a lot better than white. I actually struggled quite a bit making this first one because gluing this stuff is very, very difficult. A lot of glues just absolutely do not work with it. PVA glue is out of the question. Hot glue just is an absolute joke. It just peels right off. Even super glue I found to be very difficult to work with on this stuff. It rarely holds it together and it's just too stiff. So we're gonna do something different. In order to really make sure this sticks well to the glue and the primer, I am going to wash it first with some isopropyl alcohol. This may be unnecessary. I would recommend washing it at least with some soap and water, but since I have some alcohol, I'm just gonna use that. And this should hopefully remove any oils or mold release or whatever might be on it from the manufacturing process. This type of plastic they use is really oily. I don't understand much about it. I don't know what the plastic is. I'm not a chemist. I'm sure lots of internet chemists will tell me in the YouTube comments, and their facts will probably contradict each other as they often do. Anyway, take some precautions, clean it up. I'm gonna start with the top and two of the sides, and I'm just gonna use this one for reference because when I made this one, I already made it a good size to put your average single hero figure underneath. So you can, trap a mini inside it on the table. You can obviously scale this up or down if you'd like, but I'd recommend making it at least big enough to hold your average mini. So on this one, I made it 14 squares. This stuff is incredibly easy to cut with a knife. It's really soft plastic. And you really don't have to measure much because it's got a grid that you can follow built right into it. And this is 13. I made this 14 by 13. Interesting. What you want to do is create a new fresh line right here. You can see where I cut it, there's all these little nubs from the cross mesh. You don't want that. You want them to all look kind of like this factory edge. So you can easily go with your knife and just carefully cut those off. Just make sure you don't accidentally cut too far and make this line too thin. So that's my top. Now to make the sides. Obviously you want this to be the same width as the top, whatever you happen to have made that. Now the height, I made this one 10 tall. Now we have to find a way to successfully glue these pieces together, and this is the real challenge of working with this material. Before we even consider glue, it's beneficial to give this a sand and roughen up the edges. So it'll give us a little more chance of a successful bond. I found the best thing to use is 5-minute epoxy, and I'm fortunate that I can buy this stuff from my local Dollar Tree for like $1 or $2. I can't remember how much this costs, like $2, something like that. It's really, really cheap and it goes a really long way. It seems to bond to this plastic better than anything else, and it's fairly quick to cure. Not as fast as super glue, but way faster than PVA. You want to stir this up really, really well. It kind of turns silver for a moment when it's starting to properly mix. And the better job you do mixing it, the more success you're going to have with it curing, although this 5-minute epoxy rarely fails in its cure, at least this brand that I use. Then you can just dip your piece into the epoxy, join it to the other one. You might want to wear gloves for this. Now, unfortunately, you have to hold it in place while it cures. And one thing to keep in mind with epoxy resin like this is that it cures on a chemical reaction with heat, which means the more of it there is, the faster it's going to cure. So this is going to cure faster than this little bit on the seam. So by the time this one is cured, this here will be wasted. So I've mixed way too much, and I'm going to attempt to glue both of these from the same batch, which means I'll have to awkwardly hold both of these together until they cure. Well, you need to hold these for about a minute for the glue to set up. You don't need to hold it the entire time it's curing. You just got to make sure it doesn't lean and fall over, so you can just grab some stuff, prop it up, and let it sit for another couple minutes while it cures. And you might accidentally glue it to your work surface like I think I just did, but that's okay. Just cut it away. Obviously, if you're going to be making a whole bunch of these, it might be worth setting up some sort of jig or guide system to hold this stuff while it cures. Once you have this U shape made, all you have to do is cut your end pieces to fit and glue them in the same fashion. Okie dokie, that was a serious pain in the bum. That didn't work too well, and now I remember why I only made one of these in the first place. These are just such a friggin' pain to glue together, and I thought it would be easier this time around, but it wasn't. I tried taping it, which I'm pretty sure I tried the first time, and it really doesn't work. The problem is this stuff slides around too much before the glue sets up. I managed to get it, and I did a pretty bad job of it. Oh, maybe I should have revisited the super glue, but I just remember it not working at all. That being said, I do have a box, and while this epoxy is nice and flexible and fairly strong, I do want this whole thing to be a lot more rigid and durable. So we're going to add some supports to the corners, and in the process actually make this thing a little bit more decorative. I have these Arrow toothpicks. They're plastic. You can buy them on Amazon. If they're still kicking around on Amazon, I'll put a link in the description because they can be kind of hard to find. That's what I used on this one to both make sort of support pieces in the corners to give, you know, more glue area, more bond, more rigidity, but also the little spikes add a nice bit of detail. So I'm going to glue these in place, and I think this time I'm going to try the super glue and accelerant to see if it works. I don't know. Yeah. This is a super annoying project. Just finish it.
this one might end up looking worse than my original, to be honest. Oh well, press on.
Okay, now I actually have a cube that's fairly durable, but it still has a lot of flex this way because these lines are really malleable. I need to do something to stiffen up that base. And for that, I'm gonna turn to my medium weight chipboard. This is that really heavy duty cardstock stuff that my friend Wylock absolutely loves, and it's perfect for this. What I wanna do is create a little rectangle bottom frame that will keep it really sturdy. So I'm just gonna place this right on the chipboard and trace out the perimeter. And because I want to be able to place minis inside, I have to cut out an inner square. And this I can just cut with my knife, and it doesn't have to be super accurate because you're not going to really be looking at it. Now I just have to turn to the epoxy one last time here. Thankfully, this time is going to be a lot easier to glue. Well, this thing is a bit of a mess, and really, again, I'm remembering why I only made one of these in the first place and haven't done a video on this yet. I'm gonna try to clean this thing up. There are some gaps, you know, along edges and some excess spillover and stuff from the epoxy. I'm gonna fill these gaps just with some hot glue, you know, it's just really just visual, and then I'm gonna go around and clean this thing up and hope for the best. Yeah, this thing is a bit of a mess, but you know what? I don't think it's actually gonna matter much. I remember when I made my first one, I thought the same thing. Total disaster, looks horrible, so messy, but once I got some paint on it, kind of looked fine, and it was really usable. All the mess from the hot glue and epoxy on the seams isn't actually the worst thing, because once this is painted, it'll just kind of look like welds. This is a perfect example of something just not really having to look that good and instead just being a useful item for the game table. It's crucial that this gets primed with a good aerosol primer because craft paint, acrylic paint, has no hope in hell of sticking to this granny grating very well. So I'm going to do that first. Time to turn this hot mess into something decent looking by painting it up. And I'm gonna try to match this paint style that I did on my old one, which is essentially a almost completely rusted looking thing. I'm gonna do this with basic cheap acrylic craft paint. First, I'm gonna coat it out in brushed dark gray, basically a gunmetal gray metallic. Then I'm gonna create a simple rust using some orange and nutmeg. Should be able to get a decent rust color out of this. Real cheap, real simple, will look serviceable. And I'm not even gonna let this dry before moving on to the rust. I'm just gonna use my same dirty brush as well. Let's see if we can get a good rust color here. Definitely want it more on the orange side than the brown. Seems pretty decent. I'm gonna take a kitchen sponge, rip off a piece, and use this to paint. And I wanna cover almost all of this. You might want it just to look metallic, and that's totally fine. But I really like this heavily rusted look. Kind of obscures how bad this thing looks. And that's it. You could certainly put a wash on this after it's dry if you wanted. I don't know that it particularly needs it though. All right, this build is not gonna win any awards, and it's not gonna get a lot of praise, and it's probably not gonna wow your players, but I think that's the important lesson in this video. Despite being something that is a bit of a train wreck to build, kind of annoying, and not that impressive as a final result, it's still very useful. Not every project is an exciting win. Some are failures and screw-ups and not that great and annoying to do, but they can still be successful and used. As annoying as the first one was to build, it's been used so many times in my game, and I'm sure the same will be true for this one. Not everything needs to be nice and fancy and cool and impressive. Some things just serve a purpose. I hope you enjoyed this video and gained some knowledge from it. If not, maybe you just enjoyed seeing me struggle with this simple little build. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. Let me know in the comments section below. If you want to pick up any tools or supplies for your own build, maybe to build something less annoying, head over to blackmagiccraft.ca. That's where I have my essential equipment page where I list all of the things that I use regularly to do the things that I do, and there's links to that stuff to help you find the right stuff. If you really enjoy these videos, consider supporting the channel on Patreon. It is through the very generous support of people in that community that allows me to make these silly videos. And the great thing is that it's a group of really awesome people, and by joining the Patreon, you get access to the Discord server and the Facebook group for the fellowship, and it's full of amazing people who will help you along the way, give you guidance, answer questions quickly, and just overall be a great place to hang out. I'd love to have you as the newest member of the Blackmagic Craft Fellowship. That's it for this week, guys. I'm gonna clean up this mess and start thinking about something cooler for next video. Cheers, guys.
Yeah.